Hey, God bless America. This is Ted Nugent, your blood brother, rocking on Music Talk Show. Heard it on the X.
Terrible Ted bringing us back. I wonder what Ted would think about Occupy Wall Street.
We had Ted on the show, and he was screaming about Nazis and such.
Well, the thing about Ted is he's a huge Tea Party fan.
Yeah.
So I don't know how he would feel about Occupy Wall Street. Once again, folks, a little different show for us today. If you want to join in the conversation, we're talking about everything under the sun. We don't want to shape anyone's opinion. We want to hear your opinion. Give us a call at 803-1520 and join in the conversation. We're going to go to the phones now, and Frank is with us. Hi, Frank.
Hiya.
How you doing, my friend?
Okay, I want to talk about John Lennon.
Okay.
All right. John Lennon was a cocaine freak. Now, you're going to have to let me talk. He not only was a cocaine freak, he used to smoke all kinds of dope, take pills, but he was a fabulous writer. Now, when I tell you, I swear to the Lord Jesus Christ, he was a cocaine freak.
Well, I think his drug issues were well documented. I don't think he hid from that. I think he came from that era too. Don't you feel?
No, not quite. He just loved to buy cocaine.
All right. Well, there's. How do you feel about these protests on Wall Street?
That's great.
So you're a fan of it?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I mean, people speaking out and saying what's on their mind.
Yeah. Not only that, your name is Rich, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Rich.
Yeah.
The known fact. Aren't they legalized bookmakers on Wall Street?
It's an interesting way to look at it, yeah. I guess they are.
Don't get busted for it.
They don't. You're right. They don't get busted in Vegas for it either, though. So.
Right, exactly.
All right, Frank. Hey, thanks so much for calling in.
Okay, pal.
All right, bye-bye.
You heard it here first. John Lennon loved to buy cocaine.
And like I say, I think that, I'm sure that's true, actually, but I don't think that he hid from his...
it was... Like you said, it was well documented.
You know something else too about John Lennon? If you want, they released a whole bunch of FBI documents. I was digging through them. Some of them are hard to read though because they actually scanned the real document in.
Yeah.
And you can read documents from the Nixon administration, the FBI, Hoover, when they were trying to deport him. And they were trying to deport him probably because of the person that he was and that a lot of people would follow him if he so chose to. And he was a cult-like figure.
Yeah.
He could say anything and people would buy into it and believe it.
Yeah.
So, that's interesting to see. It's interesting to see what the FBI was trying to do. One of the things they were trying to deport him on was a drug charge, a marijuana charge, I believe.
Yeah. It's interesting that you use that term, a cult-like figure, because, I mean, I've never thought of it like that, but he almost was like a political cult-like figure.
Oh, yeah.
Where, I mean, I've never thought of it in the terms of cult, because when I think cult, I'm thinking like Charles Manson,
yeah.
Where...
Jim Jones or
something. Where you got 16 women in a house, and, you're having babies with all of them, and, you're telling them, that you're the savior. But, I mean, yeah, it almost is like a cult-like, I mean, and not to say, he was doing anything wrong. I mean, he's enabled to his opinion, but I mean, he did have that cult following where he could say something, and if you were a John Lennon fan or, you believed, whatever he said, that was your belief too.
And the thing about it too is, was he a cult-like figure? Without a doubt. Did he have a massive following? Yes. But the world was so different then. Musicians aren't treated now the way they were back then. And he was arguably the biggest band ever. Still to this day, probably. And when he left, he took a lot of that popularity and parlayed it into, getting his own personal agenda out there. I wonder, are you familiar with the where he said the Beatles are bigger than Jesus Christ?
Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, and that happened.
People were burning his albums.
Oh my God! And I wonder if that at that moment, was that his moment where he switched directions and decided, look what I can do by saying
By
this.
saying
And
something.
maybe that's when he decided, I'm going to say just what's on my mind, period. In the very beginning, they were treated like the Backstreet Boys.
Yeah.
Or Britney or Christina Aguilera. They had handlers. They weren't allowed to they were supposed to look cute. They weren't supposed to dress a certain way. They were supposed, they were like the monkeys.
Yeah.
And I think after he got that attention from speaking his mind, I think his ideas changed at that point. That's what I think.
I don't even know if it's his ideas changed. I think he realized,
No, you're correct.
I think a light went off in his head where he said, whatever I say, people are going to take to it, or at least pay attention.
Yeah, and let me say this: I didn't mean his ideas. I don't think he changed the person that he was. I mean his ideas of publicity, and what it can do, and where he should go with it, changed at that point. I think that he. I think he realized how much power he had, and I don't even know if I don't know if that's what got him off, but I think he knew that he could definitely, stir some stuff up.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of guys that were, they were booting him out of countries all the time for these drug charges. Drug charges were very, very strict back in the day. Keith Richards in Toronto, with a heroin bust, where if it wasn't for actually a blind girl who went to the judge and said, please don't put him in jail. It's the one thing that I love is the Rolling Stones. That kept him out of jail. He still does a concert for the blind up in Toronto, still to this day.
Oh, really? I didn't
Paul
know.
McCartney was not allowed in Japan for years and years and years.
Yeah, I knew about the Paul McCartney in Japan.
Yep. So it was a way to keep these guys who the establishment kind of looked at them like counterculture heroes.
Yeah.
It was a way to keep them at bay, were these drug busts. So Jim was telling us we were going back to the political thing.
Yeah, Jim, tell us the story you told us in the break.
Oh, I was at a U2 concert. Just after that, I
think Jim's got to do his real job.
Yeah, Jim's got to answer the phone.
give me a second. Let me do my job.
Ooh, it's like a cliffhanger. Jim's got to answer a phone.
Talking about keeping unemployment rates
We
up,
need
Jim.
a call screener and Jim.
What? Yeah, we do.
We do.
But we got to keep unemployment rates down so Jim keeps his job here.
That's right.
So he's going to answer.
But you know what? This is what we're talking about. This is exactly what we're talking about. We got poor Jim, who's doing the job of a call screener.
And then they hang up.
And then they hung up. Oh, poor Jim.
I'll get you next time.
Once again, if you want, we have an open phone day here on the Heard It on the X radio show. We've never done this before, and usually the affiliate stations that carry the show don't like us to do it anyways. But we're doing it anyhow. Ha ha. So we're talking about multiple things. If Occupy Wall Street's on your mind, give us a call. If John Lennon's on your mind, it's his birthday today. He would have been 71. Paul McCartney actually married today for the third time.
Nancy Chevelle.
Which we're going to get into in just a little bit. But Jim was telling us when politics and music mix, a story that didn't go that well for Bono.
Yeah, I was at a U2 concert in Giant Stadium, the old Giant Stadium in New York, summer 2009. And he went off on his whatever it is about feeding kids in third world countries.
Right.
I don't know exactly what it was. I didn't pay attention because it wasn't something I wanted to hear during his show. I was there for the entertainment. Not
Talk about no clear objective.
Yeah.
Bono. He's against everything.
Yeah.
He's for everything. Talk about no clear objective.
And people basically booed him off the stage for it. Like the whole time he was talking about it, it was just boo this and boo that. It was just, It wasn't something people wanted to mix.
I seen Springsteen on the Rising tour, and the Rising album. Did he do that album post 9/11 purposely? Was it? I mean, was it an ode to 9/11? Was that song an ode, or just that song?
I'm trying to think. What did it come out, like 2002?
I know it came out post 9/11 because the country and when post 9/11 was so weird for all of us. And like I say, the generation that was in their 30s and 40s, which is generally the generation that's the movers and the shakers of any generation at that particular time, all of us had lived in such an unprecedented time of prosperity and peace that it was unheard of to have that happen on American soil. So it was a real weird, tense time. And Springsteen got on a rant that, looking back in hindsight, maybe I would have agreed. At this point, I might have agreed with what he was saying. but it was the same type of thing. I just didn't want to hear it at that time. I'd gone to a concert. It was toward the end of the show. It was before the encore, which I respect him for doing that because at least I was able to see the entire show. But I got up and left. My friend Steve, who was with me, got up and left. And as we were heading to the doors, there had to be 1,000 people that were walking out.
Wow.
Now it was pre-encore, or it was the encore had just been starting, so some people leave normally at that time. But there seemed to be a lot of people that were scurrying and angry.
Yeah, you're there for a concert. You're not there for a political.
Correct.
And I wonder if sometimes, I know you said like now you might agree with it. I wonder if sometimes when artists do things like that, if it almost hurts their objective and it almost shoots them in the foot. Whereas if Jim went to that U2 concert, he had a great time, and maybe U2 or maybe Bono mentioned it once, in brief, and then Jim sees Bono on TV talking about it the next week. I wonder if Jim pays attention to that. When Bono's talking about it on TV, but now because he had to sit through it at a concert and got booed and didn't want to deal with it, he sees Bono, he changed it. He doesn't care about what Bono has to say anymore.
Yeah,
I wonder if that's almost backtracking for a lot of artists.
Jim's in the room behind the glass. You can ask him.
It's it's one thing like
I'm just using Jim as an example.
Yeah,
I'm saying
right.
Maybe you would have agreed with what Springsteen was saying if he came out
at the time that Springsteen said it. I can assure you this. I didn't agree with him. I didn't. But this was really. It was really almost right after 9/11, and the mood of the hysteria had taken over. There were, once again, I think that everybody, if you're an intelligent person, you change. I'm not the same person I was at 34, nor am I the same person that I was at 24. And when I'm 54, I won't be the same person as I am now. I think that everybody's constantly evolving in their views, and especially when it comes to politics and when it comes to religion and when it comes to different things, you're looking for that higher consciousness, I guess, or something. I mean, I think it's natural, but at the time, I would not have agreed with them. I can freely admit that now, and now, 10 years after the fact, maybe I'm closer to agreeing with him.
Yeah. It just stinks though. They stopped the show, and
right.
They just do this, and it's like, do it sometime else.
When you do, like Josh said, did that affect you forever looking at Bono? Did you already look at Bono when you seen him on a TV?
Or at least in the short term, it had to make you, not want to, listen to any agenda he was forwarding.
I mean, I always liked. I've never seen him in concert before. It was actually my first U2 concert, and I didn't know exactly, but I was like, what? It's like, I don't know if I like that very much.
Right.
That, he's doing that and he's promoting that during his show. And, if it was another time, maybe I would have kind of agreed with it. If it was on, like Josh said, if it was on TV, maybe some other time, maybe I would have been like, oh, okay, that's kind of nice that he does that. But
the thing, too, with artists, it's so easy to generally, for instance, I don't know enough about Dave Matthews to know his politics. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you do. However, you can tell from the outside what his politics would be.
Yeah, it's a democratic, almost liberal.
Liberal, sure. I mean,
but the thing is, and
I think it hurts other people in an industry like movies, television, and music. It hurts them more if they're conservative than if they're liberal. I think you can just say, oh, well, what do you expect? Yeah. They're artists. But I do think, and say Ted Nugent is a perfect example. Ted Nugent will never have every single artist, especially that had the level of popularity that Ted had at one time, has all gone through this resurgence where everything old is new again, where they're instantly popular. They're the look at Ozzy. I mean, Ozzy is still relevant. Ted will never have that again, and I think it's because of his political stances. Bruce Willis too. Bruce Willis is very much conservative, and I don't see that for him in the future.
Yeah, I do think it is easier, as you said, to be liberal as an artist because they're like it's as you said, you look at artists sort of as forward thinkers, or what I mean, sort of out there. Like you were saying with Dave Matthews, he is liberal. I think the closest he ever, really came to, there's never been like the in-show speech. They did the 2004 Vote for Change tour. They did a couple of those, and he did a benefit show for John Kerry. There was an acoustic show that he did, but I mean, he has talked at shows when I've heard it and I've been there in person. It doesn't go on long, and more of when he'll talk about war, when he'll talk about something like that, it's usually a story, and it's usually I don't care what side you're on. But what we need to do is just come together as and I respect that more as it doesn't go on for long. But I think a lot of artists sort of take it too far. Where if you have that belief, go ahead, have that belief, but know the forum, know when you can come out and say that. And if I paid $100 to see you in concert, I don't want to hear a 10-minute speech about whatever the issue is when you could be playing a song that I wanted to hear because I paid $100 to hear that song.
Right. And I understand your point of view, too. All right, we're going to take a short commercial break. Come back on the other side. If you want to join the conversation, 803-1520, talking about everything under the sun. And does politics belong in music? Who knows? Let's talk about it afterwards.